What's good, y'all? Anderson Emerald here to talk about World Athletics Athlete of the Year. This whole situation that, of course, everyone's been blown up on the past couple days because World Athletics, I don't know how this actually happened. I genuinely don't know how it happened, but we're gonna talk through, kind of the breakdown of, how their process actually works. We'll talk about, of course, the athletes who are in the conversation, who should have been the finalists, both on the women's track side and the field side. People aren't talking about the field events as much, but that also was done, in my opinion, just as dirty. But also we'll talk about, the fan voting, and then I'm going to go through very quickly the athletes in their different seasons and why these things just didn't make sense. But I already did put out a video on Melissa Jefferson-Wooden. Once I saw these results, I was like, I got to put this out. So check out that video. I'll link it in the description, put the thumbnail up here on the screen, but broke down Melissa Jefferson-Wooden's 2025 season, compared it to some of the other great seasons in history. So check out that full video. Of course, it's on the other channel, so subscribe there as well. But before I dive in, also want to give huge prayers to Jamaica. This is probably the first video that I'm making since, the Hurricane Melissa out in Jamaica. Huge prayers to everyone down on the island. So many people were affected. Of course, this isn't just like, people are still picking themselves up after a day or a week or a month. Like, this is, people's lives were changed after what just occurred with this hurricane. One of the most, if not the, most devastating hurricane that Jamaica has seen in decades. So, like, prayers up. Of course, I spoke to a bunch of people that I know down on the island. Definitely support however you can, if you can, like, whatever it may be, but also just send some prayers out to Jamaica. Huge shout outs to everybody, because I know a lot of Jamaicans do watch the channel, and like I said, there's a lot of people who I had to reach out to make sure that they're okay. But a lot of people's lives changed. Really devastating. So prayers for Jamaica. So let's dive in. First off, as I said, World Athletics, they announced that on the women's track athlete of the year situation side, they have Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone and Femke Bol as the finalists, right? As the finalists. Also, on the field event side, they have Nicola Olaslagers as well as Tara Davis-Woodhall as the finalists. I'm going to break down why this is also an issue. It's just that track is a lot more high profile, so people are going to be up in arms about this. But we'll talk about field events in a second. First thing, how is it that their selection process actually works in general? Because this has been their selection process for like the past 2-3 years or so, 23, 24, 25, I think. But first off, you have a breakdown of 3 sections of voting. Even before we get to vote or the council gets to vote, what they actually do is they have a panel of international experts. They compile a long list of nominees for each of the 3 main award categories, which is track athlete of the year, field eventer of the year, and out of stadium, which is just like road events, whatever it may be, cross country, I guess, I don't know. Voting will take place to determine the 2 finalists in each category. So before the voting takes place, we got the 5 finalists on the men's and the women's side. We're focusing on the women for today. So of course, on the women's side, for the 5 finalists, you had Beatrice Trevette, you had Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, Faith Kipyegon, Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, and Femke Bol. So for the most part, I think everyone probably could agree. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but like, people can agree these are good 5 finalists. And I think most can agree, Femke Bol, in terms of accolades for 2025, she was probably the bottom of these 5. Melissa, Faith, Sydney, and Beatrice, top 4, very clear, and we'll discuss why, some of them are ahead of the others in a second. But on the field event side, same thing. Whoever this, they determined that you had Val Allman, you had Tara Davis-Woodhall, you had Camryn Rodgers, Nicola Olaslagers, as well as Anna Hall. So I'm going to get to the field events in the second half of the video. Check the timestamps, you can skip forward to that. Now, after those 5 are determined, what is the voting structure? Well, the World Athletics Council will vote will count for 50% of the result. So this is to get to the finalists. While the World Athletics family votes and social media votes will each count for 25% of the result. So ultimately combining for 100%. Who is the World Athletics Council? Like, who is this? It's a little nebulous, but we actually do know. Shout out to both throws. World Athletics Council, we'll talk about the field events in a second. This is essentially a whole bunch of athletes athletes or people who might not have been athletes, maybe were, administrators or federation heads or something like that, whatever. Majority, they're previous athletes who now serve on the council as part of World Athletics. Some of these names I know I'm familiar with, some of them y'all may be familiar with. So for example, like Nawal, she was a 1984 Olympic champion in the 400 hurdles. You have Willie Banks, right, the triple jump, legend. You have Seb Coe, the World Athletics president, of course, middle distance legend. Some others who I vaguely recognize, Restrepo from South America, Ximena Restrepo. You have Sidonie Mothersill, represented Cayman Islands. You have Val Allman, of course, is the GOAT of this shot put, in my opinion. So a lot of these are former athletes who are on the World Athletics Council. So they count for a total of 50% of the vote. But then you have the World Athletics family. Now, this is a little bit nebulous in terms of who is actually included as part of the World Athletics family. You're never going to see any names, and this is a very large group. But essentially, from my understanding, this is made up of like former athletes, in track and field who competed at some point. Also, members of like national federations and area federations as well, like European athletics and NACAC and like all these different federations. That's my understanding of who is part of World Athletics family. But it's a very nebulous group. But then, of course, you do have the fan vote, which is also 25%. That comes in via Facebook, Instagram, and X and Twitter, right? So that's how the voting is actually broken down. So two things. One, we don't know, how the World Athletics Council or the World Athletics family votes, but we do know how the fan vote actually did come out, at least for the track side. Shout out to AJT. Well, for everything, but like shout out to AJT actually broke this down. The fan vote, Faith Kipyegon completely blew it out the water when it comes to the fan vote. Like completely blew it out the water in terms of getting the most votes from the fan vote. Faith Kipyegon, 48,395. Beatrice Chebet was in second place. Femke Bol was in third place. Sydney and then Melissa bring up the rear. So by default, Faith Kipyegon, Beatrice Chebet were the top two by the fan vote. And then you get Femke Bol, and then you get Sydney, and then you get Melissa. So if the fan vote didn't go for either Sydney or Femke, then that means that the World Athletics Council and the World Athletics family must have overwhelmingly voted for especially Sydney, and then of course definitely Femke Bol, right? Which it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And Faith Kipyegon led every single source for the fan vote: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So there's no debate as to at least Faith Kipyegon maybe should have been up there. But again, it's only 25%. So I don't know. It is what it is. I think that's one of the big problems, though, when it comes to this idea of having the fan vote and then having two other, aspects. If you're going to include fans, I think that there should be some level of transparency of okay, fan vote. We know how much percentage the fans actually voted for each of the athletes, but can we get transparency potentially on how the percentage breakdown from the World Athletics Council and from that World Athletics family? I'm not saying that you need to give, Seb Coe voted for this athlete or Valerie Adams voted for this athlete. I don't think we need to do that. But at least saying okay, World Athletics Council, they voted 25% for, Femke Bol, 25% for Sadie McLaughlin-Levrone, and then the other three are broken up by whatever percentage, right? At least provide some transparency so the public knows, okay, wow, they did go in favor of Sydney and Femke Bol, right? So that's one aspect that I think would be beneficial. But I don't know. This was just wild. So getting to the finalists, in my opinion, made absolutely no sense. No sense. Sydney and Femke, I don't think they should have been the finalists, especially Femke. I think that's a clear, thing that's gotten into the track and field world where it's Femke Bol, of course, she is an amazing athlete. She definitely has done so much. She won the gold medal. I think some people sometimes discredit her for what she's accomplished because, of course, Sydney isn't there. When 2023 she won the gold, 2025 she won the gold, Sydney wasn't there, so Femke was able to easily win those golds. Even though, yes, Sydney would have won the golds, but I personally can't discredit Femke because she showed up when it counted the most, despite who was in or out of the field. So that's what I want to give at least some shout outs to Femke. But it wasn't good enough in 2025 relative to the other women who she was competing against. The other thing that I think is maybe a little hard for some to swallow, in my opinion, I don't think Sydney should have been a finalist here as well. Like I said, when you're talking about Beatrice Chebet as well as Faith Kipyegon and Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, I think all three of them had greater seasons than Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. And let's be very clear, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, in my opinion, had the performance of the year, right? Her 47.7 to win the gold medal is a time that many thought was impossible, but Sydney was able to step into a new event and absolutely dominate that race. That is arguably the performance of the year. Many people might argue that Beatrice Chebet, with her, sub 14-minute race in the 5K world record, is the performance of the year. But let's just say Sydney has a performance of the year. When it comes to a full season, Beatrice Chebet, having set the world record in the 5,000 meters, running 13.58, having won the gold medal in the 5K ahead of Femke Bol, who dominated the 5K and the 1500 in previous years, having won the gold medal ahead of her, having been able to get the gold medal in the 10,000 meters as well, and having got the third fastest performance of all time in the 3,000. Like, as a full season, I can't deny what Beatrice Chebet did. Same thing with Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, who was frequently running all throughout the year, undefeated in the 100. Go check out the full video breakdown that I did about her already. Undefeated in the 100. She averaged like 10.7 something. I think it was like 10.79 seconds overall in the 100 meters this year. Moved to number 4 all time in the 100. Moved to number 8 all time in the 200. Like, Melissa Jefferson-Wooden dominated in 2025. Like, I think Beatrice and Melissa are the top two. Femke Bol, I can also make an argument that she was ahead of Sydney this year as well, where she broke the world record in the 1500 meters. She went undefeated in the 15, and she won the gold medal. And in the 5,000, she got the silver medal in the at the World Championships. So if I'm saying, like, Faith, Melissa, Beatrice, I feel like, in my opinion, those are the top three. Sydney just slightly behind, but I can't take anything away from what she did for the full season, right? And I know people are going to come at me, oh, you're just hating on. Sure, it is what it is. This is just my opinion. Go ahead and comment below, or give your opinion. It's what it is. But I think by far Femke Bol should not have been top finalists in any capacity. And then I also think that Beatrice, Melissa were the top two of the year, and people are sleeping on what Femke Bol did in 2025. Now, I do want to talk about the field eventers, because this was also a very, very big missed opportunity, where I think they completely just got this wrong as well. And Tara Davis-Woodhall, Nicola Oleslagers, I don't think they are the top two for 2025. In my opinion, I think that Val Allman definitely should have been a finalist, if not the Woman of the Year when it comes to field events, for what she did in discus. And I can make an argument, and I truly do believe, in my opinion, that Anna Hall might actually should have been a finalist as well. Maybe even Camryn Rodgers. I think based on Nicola Oleslagers should not have been a finalist. All due respect, she really did amazing this year, but she should not have been a finalist. Tara Davis-Woodhall also, shout out to Tara. Like, she's an amazing athlete. She had an undefeated season, dominated this year, but relative to the other athletes, I just personally don't think that she should have been a finalist as well. Let me talk about these field eventers to kind of highlight, what I'm kind of breaking down here. So if you look at Oleslagers and what she did in the high jump in 2025, she was the world indoor champion, in the high jump, and she was the world outdoor champion in the high jump. But throughout her entire season, she actually only quote unquote won 9 out of her 12 high jump competitions. 9 out of the 12. When you compare that to Tara Davis-Woodhall, who went undefeated, to Val Allman, who was undefeated, to Anna Hall, who in her heptathlon was undefeated, if I could bring this up here, undefeated in her heptathlon. Camryn Rodgers, who only lost 1 competition, right? So Oleslagers, she just doesn't match up when it comes to having an undefeated season, quote unquote, right? On top of that, if you look at what she did, her personal best, season's best of 2.04 meters this year, yes, it was a world-leading performance, but when you look at where it ranks her all time, it only makes her number 16 all time in the high jump. Number 16 all time in the high jump. How does that compare to some of the other women? In the discus throw, Val Allman, she moves up to number 6 all time in the discus throw. Number 6 all time. In the hammer throw with Camryn Rodgers, she moves up to number 2 all time when talking about the hammer throw. Camryn Rodgers, for what she did this year. Also, when you're talking about the heptathlon, Anna Hall, she moved up to number 2 all time in the heptathlon, equal number 2 with Carolina Clough, right? So how is it that someone who moves to number 16 all time had a worse record in a sense compared to some other women who are undefeated? How are they going to be a finalist here, right? And just to kind of add to the argument, my discussion around Tara Davis-Woodhall and her performance, if you look at the long jump, her 7.13 only clocks her in at number 32 all time when talking about the long jump. And yes, Tara Davis-Woodhall is already at number 23 with her 718 from last year, but when talking about a 2025 season athlete of the year, we're looking at what actually occurred in this year. So Tara, number 32 all time with her mark. Now, shout out to Tara, where she went undefeated in all of her competitions, right? She have 6 different, at least, competitions in 2025. She went undefeated in all of them. But like I said, someone like Val Allman went undefeated in all of her competitions. She threw 14 different competitions and won every single one of them. Not only did she win every single one of her competitions, when I'm looking at that all-time list where I said that she moved up to number 6 all-time, look at the women who are ahead of Valerie Allman. Look at the women who are ahead of her. All these women, they threw these marks out in the 1980s, and all of them were either part of like state-sponsored doping programs or was previously caught for doping during the 1980s. And shout out to Daniela, but I think she represented Romania and then transferred to Australia in the 1990s. But early in the 1980s or mid 1980s, I think 86 or 87, which was like a year before she threw this number 5 mark, I think she was caught for doping. And I say this all to say, Valerie Allman with this number 6 all time is basically what Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone did in the 400, where she was chasing Marita Koch in that world record, and the world record we thought was absolutely impossible. Valerie Allman is doing something very similar in the discus throw, and essentially, many may argue this is like the legal quote-unquote world record, if you want, right? Like, this is what I'm talking about, where Valerie Allman, in my opinion, was snubbed for a spot in the finalists. If not, in my opinion, she might be the World Athlete of the Year, right? She might be the World Athlete of the Year. Same thing with Anna Hall, who she did 3 heptathlon competitions in 2025, and she won all of them. They were the top 3 marks of the year, ahead of any other athlete, and she moved herself to number 2 all time, only behind the legendary Jackie Joyner-Kersee, who arguably has one of the greatest world records in the sport of track and field, right? I think Anna Hall also very much deserves to be in the conversation for a finalist spot. Very much deserves. Camryn Rodgers, like I said, almost undefeated. She lost 1 competition this year. Out of her 11 competitions, she only lost a single one in 2025. And her mark of 80.51 meters moved her up to number 2 all time, only behind the legendary Anita Vidalchik. Let me get the hammer throw here. Only behind the legendary Anita Vidalchik. Like, we're talking about greatness in the hammer throw from Camryn Rodgers and her consistency all throughout 2025. Consistency. This is what I mean, where I know the field events, they didn't get as much love, but I really think Valerie Allman specifically, in my opinion, I actually might have her as the Athlete of the Year, but I'm not mad at Anna Hall or Camryn Rodgers. But clearly, that means that these women were snubbed, because I definitely don't think Nicola Olaslagers, shout out to her, amazing season, but I definitely don't think she holds up relative to the other women. And then Tara Davis-Woodhall, same thing. Shout out to her, put on an amazing performance, especially at Athlos, in Times Square. But as a full season, relative to what the other women did, I don't think it stacks up. But that's just my opinion. Of course, I went a little more in depth, speaking about the different seasons and all that. But let me know, again, check out the full video breakdown that I did of Melissa Jefferson-Wooden and her 2025 season. Of course, I covered the sprints and stuff, so I wanted to give her a shout out. But man, Valerie Allman in the discus throw, I think she's the Athlete of the Year. But I ain't mad at, Camryn Rodgers, Anna Hall. I don't know, man. But shout out to all these women. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Truly do appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.